Welcome. So we're going to talk about second session throughout the day. Rough start, right? Everyone feeling good? Good? Okay. So we're going to talk about the best API. It's Python API. I'm here with my colleague John Yaste, and we're going to give you a good intro, hopefully, to scripting your Web GIS. So it's all around the Python API. And what John and I like to do is make this as informal as possible. If you guys have questions throughout this, you can blurt them out. It doesn't distract us. He's a professional speaker. And my thing's not showing. What's going on here? Yeah, we're professionals. All right. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. And if you're like me, you want to ask a question in private afterwards, feel free to come up. We'll take questions afterwards. And so let's get started, all right? So just out of curiosity, how many people are using ArcGIS API for Python? Okay, good. Okay, so hopefully we'll teach you something new today. All right. So we get this question asked a lot. So what is this ArcGIS API for Python? You obviously saw it in our plenary with obviously notebooks, automation, GeoAI and stuff. So at the very bare minimum, it's basically we created this API wrapped around our REST API to work with your Web GIS, which is Portal, Enterprise, Online, right? Tried to simplify that by giving you a good familiar experience using Python, right? So it's for managing your content, grabbing content, and doing other things. It's basically what it is. So how we look at it today, we're on version 1.60. I just saw that when I did conda install. So we have various modules within the API. So at the basic core, it starts with your GIS. You could do anonymous connections to it. You could do secure connections. You could do identity providers. And then with that, we have a widget. So it's interactive within Jupyter Notebooks, right? It doesn't need to be interacted at all within it. You can script it within your environment if you just want to use PyCharm. We'll show you some examples of that. But for the data sciences and such forth, you're probably going to mostly use in Jupyter Notebooks. And then with that, we have various modules. So modules in blue are various things to do like enrichment, enriching demographic rich services to do that. Geometry type stuff, geocoding, calling your own local provider, or stuff on online. And then of course you could do geoprocessing tools as well. And then we have other out-of-the-box modules to support geoanalytics, calling you in raster and feature big data analysis, to doing things such as real-time and doing network type routing analysis and such forth, right? So it's this very modular API that you could load and load the different modules you need and interact with those as well, okay? One good question we always get is, you guys have this thing called arcpy, and ArcGIS API for Python, is one gonna kill the other and vice versa? No, absolutely not. They both work in two different environments. You could work with them in parallel, work with them together. So the way to think about it is ArcGIS API for Python is to script against your portal. It works with an online or enterprise. It's based upon Python 3x, and it does analysis, right? Portal admin, content creation, big data analysis, right? ArcPy is obviously built around ArcGIS Desktop. Use it for within ArcMap. Use 2x. ArcGIS Pro is 3x. Mainly used for map automation. Very powerful. Mostly geoprocessing stuff, right? So you can use both, right? So we're not going to kill it off. So when we built this API, we really built it for 4 different working groups with the Python API, right? As we all know, we all have different job functions. We wear many different hats depending upon what we need to accomplish at task at hand. And there's 4 different groups, and let's talk about those in a little more detail. Okay, so who's it for, right? So how many people are doing org administration type stuff? Okay, good. Well, there's some stuff for you to minimize and improve your efficiency and effectiveness in doing like repetitive tasks, right? So you could do org administration. Who's publishing content, right? A lot of you are creating web maps. Many of you are updating web maps, maybe reordering fields, grabbing data from different data sources, and then maybe you need to publish them online. Maybe those data change over time, maybe once a week, daily. You can automate all that, put on a task scheduler and just go home early. No, but you can do like a lot of different cool stuff with that, right? And then of course, there's off the side of that spectrum is, analysis, doing big data analytics, geospatial type stuff like spatial analysis and geoprocessing, as well as machine learning stuff, right? Bringing third-party libraries into your Python API environment to add to the work you're doing. You can do that well. And then of course, it's an API, so it's built for developers as well, okay? You don't have to be a developer to do it. There is some stuff that you might need to dive deeper into code to make things happen, but you can get started without having to be this hardcore developer. So let's talk about some of these more common workflows. So let's talk about automation of Web GIS. So first and foremost, you can populate portal with users and groups, right? Without having to manually create it. We'll show you an example of that. You can clone portals. So let's say you have a production application that you don't want to touch, right? And you have a staging one where you want to mitigate the kind of hits on your production. Well, you can grab your content from your staging and push it to production, right? You can reassign user content, right? Unfortunately, some people leave our organization. How do you reassign content so our end users don't experience any problems, when they're accessing content? You could pour comprehensive content search. You can inspect broken links and such forth. You can create statistics of users of information. What's the very most popular item? What are people using? Who's not using our portal? We can start doing that, right? So really a good landscape of, how much traffic, who's not using it, and such forth. That's all within that you can do. And also too, you can automate content creation, right? So let's say you have large amounts of data sets where you don't want to impact your users, right? So if they're in the map viewer and you're uploading data on real time when they're in there, you don't want to give them this, this user experience where the map's refreshing and they're like, what's going on here? You can automate that content off publishing peak hours. Or, you can overwrite the entire records, or you can overwrite certain ones that changed as far as data sets. And then of course, you can inspect and update items with broken service links as well, okay? And then of course, I think the big important thing is to be able to do reproducible research, right? So as we get more computation power, that gives us more dynamics to access big data tools, to access them programmatically. So as we start accessing large amounts of data, as we start to accumulate all that, we want the ability to build in and use in other third-party tools, right? So you can mix and match and bring in other third-party tools into your environment. And I can create these rich charts and graphs using Matplotlib, Seaborn to really give me some more insights to what my data means beyond just either tabular or map. I can start bringing other chart components into it. And I think most importantly too is the ability to share that information and your notes with your peers, right? That's what we're all about, is sharing information among that. That way we're not reproducing anything that they have to do. It's all centralized and then they can do that. So what does that all mean today? It's ArcGIS plus Jupyter, right? It's just goodness. So we use the ArcGIS API for JavaScript is actually the map in the Jupyter Notebook. It's a widget, right? So we have a hook that goes into it, loads the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, and then that's how we draw that visualization component in the Jupyter Notebook. And where it all starts with is your Web GIS, right? So when you first begin with the ArcGIS API for Python, you call your library, so you would go from arcgis.import, that's your GIS. You do GIS, assign that a variable to your GIS, and then you define your portal instance with your user, and that'll prompt you for a password, or from your enterprise, the same thing. Very common workflow to instantiate that authentication, right? Or if you're hitting that server over and again, you can store those credentials, right, to perform that authentication for you. And then what also you can do is you could search for content as well. As you know, Portal and ArcGIS Online is a mass database of content. You can easily search information in there and get results back in a great UI view. And you can bring other Python libraries in there to give you a little more rich display, to look at more of the metadata to really get a good understanding of what that data is. And then of course, like we were saying before, there is a map component to the Jupyter Notebook. But there's a misconception that, oh, I have to use Jupyter Notebooks. Well, no, you don't. You can use a PyCharm, right, to load the ID and put on a task scheduler, and you don't ever have to interact with the map if you want. Throughout this presentation, we'll use Jupyter Notebooks. It's a great visualization tool, and you can do it for presentations as well. But you can visualize layers on a map widget, right, and inspect that further. Very dynamic, coding on the fly. It's a pretty cool environment. So at the core of it, we have this thing called GIS module, right? And then you can do content, users, groups, and then under that you have other classes and methods that you can do other information, such as grab items, update descriptions, share, delete content, create new groups, assign them, search for users, update users, assign roles, etc. It's all within that you can do that. So how do I get it? So how many of you guys are using ArcGIS Pro today? Okay. Well, congratulations. You guys have ArcGIS API for Python, if you haven't used it. That comes pre-shipped with our, I think, 1.52 version. I'd have to check, but I think I was pretty sure. It's included with our latest instance of ArcGIS Pro. You can also do pip install. If you don't have Pro, don't worry. You can get it from this package called Anaconda, which is basically a package distribution for Python. And then you could do something like Conda install, Esri, ArcGIS, right? So let's build our first hello map, okay? So let's assume you don't have the Python API, wrong session. Okay, so first thing you do is you go and search this thing called Anaconda, right? So you go to Anaconda, just think of it as a package distribution for Python. It comes with a lot of useful other Python libraries with it. And then basically what you do is you just hit download, and then you download your environment. So if you're a Windows Mac, right, you're going to download, it's going to be Python 3.7 version, right? You download that, it installs that, okay? So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go to your apps. You're going to have this thing called Anaconda here. You go to more, open file location. And then we have different clones within our environment for testing and other things. And I think John has a little more on his. And he'll probably show some of those. But basically, I'm going to run this as an administrator here. And then simply what I could do is, let's say, assume I didn't have the Python package. I could do something like, I'll just copy and paste here. Do something like this, go here, and then just hit enter, right? I already have Python installed. It'll go search all the metadata. And then what it'll do is it'll prompt me, do you want to upgrade to the latest version, which is 1.6? You can hit yes or no. And that's it. And then what happens is, right, you get that installed, and then you can come back in here and go like Jupyter Notebook, right? And just hit enter. And this is going to run a local instance of that notebook environment, right? So it's all going to be structured by folders and stuff. So I have everything that I pretty much create in this thing called samples. And it's just an interactive IDE, okay? As long as you have the right libraries installed. So let's go through our first map here and create an application. So we're going to select new Python 3, okay? So you're going to see it says kernel ready. This is the active cell environment. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create our first map, okay? So you can do markdown in here. So I can say first map. I can do markdown here, right? Hit shift enter. There's my first map. You can grab you can do other HTML in here. So let's say I wanted to grab an image source here, and I wanted to come in here and do something like this, and just close this bracket here, and just call here hello map, right? So you can do this nice, good visual representation of the story you're going to tell in this notebook, and do markdown in here to give a little more instructional information in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our notebook. All right, so let's go from ArcGIS, right? And then we're going to do .gis, and then we're going to import GIS, right? And then from here, we're going to go GIS equals GIS method, not minus, right? And then we're going to just do anonymous connection here. So you're going to see this asterisk here. That's the active cell running. Okay, so that's executed, right? So basically, we're assigning a variable GIS to the GIS method, right? So here, that means that's an anonymous connection, right? So you can make anonymous connections to this. Okay, so what do we always work with here? We're maps, right? So let's go ahead and create a map variable, and let's assign this to GIS. And then if you hit tab, you can see the available properties associated. So let's go ahead and do map. And then what we're going to do is we're going to center around this beautiful area of Palm Springs here. So we go Palm Springs, CA, and then basically what we're going to do is we're going to call map, and this will load our map here. Okay, so as that loads, it's a 2D map with 3D, so 3D control to switch in the view from the, now we have a 3D control in there, okay? So let's switch back to 2D. Okay, so let's keep adding to this map. So other things we could do like map.center, and we can give it some arguments to say, all right, I want to center around Palm Springs, so let's see, that's 824, and comma, let's go 116.538, right? And that should center there. What happened there? Yeah, well, shoot, hold up. Equals, you gotta forget the equal there. See, this is what happens when you code on the fly, all right. Okay, so now map center, so center that, and then you could do other things like map.zoom equals 15, right? So now we're more centered around where we're at. And then I can start inspecting other things like let's start off the type. Let's do map.base maps to get all the variable base maps here. So these are querying all the base maps available within ArcGIS Online. And let's go ahead and grab one of these. So let's just grab one of these, street navigation, and let's go map.base map equals street nav. And that should change our map there, right? So now we have this map here. So we're here in that orange area. So other things that you could do is let's start searching for content, right? So let's create a variable called PIL content here. And let's search for some. So we go gis.content.search. So you can see there's different other functions here. So let's go search. You can give it a blank string, like if I wanted to come in here and say, all right, I just want Palm Springs. And you would get everything in Palm Springs, right? But I'm gonna look for a particular data set called Palm Springs POI, and I wanna look for an item type, and that item type, it could be equal to could be a feature layer or a web map. So let's go ahead and do feature layer. And then you can define the items, how many you want returned. So let's go max items equal, I don't know, let's do 10, right? And then to read that content, we just go POI underscore content here. All right, and then here we get a list of that information. Not too rich of information, just gives us an item type title. So let's suppose we wanted a more richer display. We could do something like Python, did brain freeze there. Python dot display, and then we're going to import a display, and then we just throw this in a loop here and say, all right, so for item, okay, and then we're going to say in POI underscore content, we're going to grab that and say, okay, put that in a loop and say, all right, we want the display, and they want to just grab the items in that display here. So let's say display underscore item. And this will get a little more richer display. Ha ha ha.
Uppercase B.
Oh yeah, that always gets me there. All right, so there we go. All right, so there we go. So now we have our content here. And then, as you all know, programmatically, since we want to grab anything in this list here, it always starts at 0. So let's suppose we want to grab 0, 1, 2, 3, the fourth one down, right, of that content. So let's grab this POI data. So we could do something like I don't want to do that. All right, so let's do POI. And then let's assign that variable to POI content here. And we're going to do map.add layer. And then you guessed it, we're just going to add that POI, right? And if we go back up to our map, it should be loading. There's our POI content, right? So grabbing services directly from a feature layer, right? Pretty straightforward, interactive, and map right there. Okay. The beauty of it too is you can start adding other modules in there. As you noticed in the beginning, I just added one module to that. So next thing I could do is I could do from ArcGIS, right? Let's just show you the various modules here. There we go right here, and let's say I want geocoding, and then I could just simply say import geocode, right? All right, so that gives me access to that module, and I could do something like help or question mark if I wanted to, and say help geocode, and it would give me the list of arguments for that geocode function here. Argument takes a description, requires a list of strings or dictionary, so it gives you information from that, right? So you don't have to actually look up in the doc, you can get it directly from the environment. Okay, so let's suppose we wanted to do something like downtown Palm Springs to use that geocoding function. So we could do downtown PS and say geocode, and then we could say, all right, we want our area, which is Palm Springs, and then we would say, okay, we want 0, and then and the beauty of it is you can add multiple maps within this notebook. So I could say that map 1 equals GIS dot, and then map. And then I would just go downtown PS, right? And then to call that map, you just go map 1. And then that should load us a new map. Okay, perfect. So now we have this new map in here. So you can have multiple maps in here, right? Okay, so now that we have our map, next thing you want to do, I don't know if you're like me, but when I come to a new city, I like to explore the restaurants in the area, right? So let's go ahead and search POI information with using the geocoding function. So let's create a variable called restaurants. Let's assign that to geocode, right? And then let's give it some arguments. So I'm going to select none. We could put in here like Starbucks or other things. So let's go ahead and put none. And our extent is going to be downtown, and that's going to be Palm Springs, which is going to be our assigned variable downtown PS, right? And then we're going to give it an extent argument here to say, let's only search the extent. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a category. And last night I went to Thai food, so I know there's a Thai place down the street, so I just want to make sure this works. So now we're going to category Thai food. Now there's multiple categories, let's like donuts, coffee, etc. And then I want max underscore locations to be, by default, the geocoding service center will give you 50, but I'm going to just do, I'll do 25. And then next thing I can do is I can grab these, and then next thing I'm going to do is we're going to throw these into a loop, right, to a for loop, and say, all right, for restaurant, if I could type here, in restaurants, right, and then I'm not going to type all this. Yeah, that's a good thing of copy and paste here. All right, so we're going to grab this pop-up here. So basically we're going to bind these loop results into a pop-up, right? So we're going to grab the attributes for this from this geocoding function for the place's name, right? So this returns a dictionary back. So we're going to grab the place's name. We're going to configure the pop-up to grab the restaurant phone number. We're going to do a break. So we break to the next line and grab the address and put the place address. And then basically we're going to draw that on the map. Okay, so there we got our, now these are the default graphics returned from the JavaScript API with this transparency. So if we search in here, let's see, we should have our pop-up configured with our information from there. Okay, and if you wanted to get a list of like the dictionary results, you could do something like restaurants and just hit enter. And that would give you all the dictionary results from that, so you could see how I'm grabbing that attribute information. Okay, all right, so that's your hello map sample. All right, so let's get back to our presentation here. Okay, so what about different authentication schemes? Because right now, so far, we had only showed you anonymous connections, right? It supports many different authentication schemes, okay? So you could do built-in users, you could users using LDAP, using basic authentication, you could do pro authentication as well. You could do integrated Windows authentication, Kerberos, all these different ones supporting that environment, okay? So let's look at a specific workflow, because I know a couple of you guys raise your hands, you guys are dealing with ArcGIS Enterprise org stuff. Okay, so here I have a blank organization, right? There's no interface as far as any banner. I might have some content, let's see. Very minimal. I have this Flickr search extension. If I go to my organization, I have 2 users, probably the admin and myself. If I go to groups, I have no content, right? Okay, so let's get back into our presentation. And let's get back here. All right, okay. So now I'm putting on my hat, and I'm assuming now I'm an administrator, okay? So let's show you what you can do from an administration standpoint, some workflows. Okay. So here we're importing the ArcGIS library, asterisk, getting everything. And then from this, there's this Python module called getPassImport getPass module. You don't have to use it. This basically just masks the password being entered in the system, but by default, if we don't detect the password, we'll prompt you for that, okay? So basically, I'm gonna call this portal here, right? Now I'm gonna provide some authentication to that portal here, hit enter. Probably wrong password, let's see. I love it when this doesn't work. Okay, maybe that's not the right one. Let me see. Wait, could be the wrong one. Portal. All right, yep. I changed my web adapter 2 days ago, so. What's that? Oh, yeah. See what happens, guys? Demo on the fly.
Don't type in public.
Yeah, all right, so now we're there. All right, so now we have, this is my portal instance. Okay, now then you come in here, you can query for users, search, here's my default admin, here's some default that come with that. I can get information about myself, right? There's me. When I joined, I could search for users if I wanted to. I could search for that other user in here, which is admin. All right, so this one needs a quote at the end here. Okay, and then you can create users. So you could do gis.usersCreate, right? And it gives you the information about the signature and what you need to call in that argument stuff, right? Without going to the API reference, or you could do help on that. All right, so I want to create a user. And here's his password, here's his information, right? So now this variable is an object, so if I go back to my organization, I should have Mr. Clark in there with me. Perfect, Clark Kent, there we go, okay. So now there, I could grab information, update information, description, just look at what he has, and then I can do something like Clark.delete since it's an object. It gave me a Boolean, it's true, so he's gone, right? And then I can do other stuff like I can search for groups, and then I can create a group, and let's call this PS, because I think that other one's created. That one's created. You can get information right there about the group, okay? And then I can see there's a group, type of group, it should say it's public, probably, group access is public, right? So that's just scripting with it, right? Very minimal code, right? Just to grab information. So let's suppose it's a Friday, right? And your boss gets this idea and he or she walks in your office and they go, hey, I want you to create a new portal with new users for each of our regional teams and multiple groups. And every member is part of all the groups of which they belong. I need this before you go home. And it's 4:45. You got dinner reservations at 5:30, right? Have no fear. ArcGIS API for Python is here to help, right? So with some simple modules, what we could do is we can automate this complete task, right? Now, normally what I would do, now this is just for demonstration purposes, that's why I'm doing it in Notebook, but normally I would just put this on a scheduler, task scheduler, Windows, or cron, and then put it on a job and just let it work, right? But just for demo purposes, we're just gonna walk through it here through Notebooks. So here we're gonna import some helper libraries. So we're gonna import CSV, and we're gonna work with some JSON, right? So here we're gonna create a function called create groups to handle get a dictionary reader to open the groups of the CSV, right? Who are the people a member of the groups? And then we're just gonna basically loop through those and then create a group from the dictionary, right? We're not doing anything right now, we're just walking through these functions, okay? Here we're gonna add the users, right? So we're gonna have a function called create users. We're gonna loop through them, create the users, password, first name. We're grabbing all that from a CSV. And then we're gonna search for the group of that, and then we'll add those users to that, okay? And then we'll write some exemptions if it fails. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we have content that's associated with the users, and then we gotta assign them appropriate content to each user based upon their territory. So we read the CSV of the users, we read that, and then we see we have this web map template that contains some information in there, and then we loop through each user, and then we can assign the published content, how they're assigned to that organization, right? Okay. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the UI for the enterprise, right? So here we have a logo, a background, set it to false because we want the background just white, and then we just have some logos here. Okay, so now we have those functions, and all we need to do now is just call all those functions. So let's just call those, and then now we should, and if it works, here we go, we should be getting something like that. So if I go here, I should be having the users come in right here. Let's go to home. There we go. I go to organize content. I should have some content come there. There goes one coming in. Organization should have users coming in, hopefully. All right, so there we go. So got users coming in. If I go to groups, I got more groups now, right? So that's a way how to automate that, right? So now your boss has an idea. Well, you know what? You did all that work for nothing. Now you got to delete everything, right? Well, simply, it's pretty easy. You have a cleanup script, right? So now you can run that environment in your Python. So here's a cleanup script that I just call cleanup. My secret credentials are up top. And basically, I just run through that and clean that script up, right? So I could just go here, run. That's run administration. But I can run this and run that cleanup. And then that just cleans out my portal, right, from scratch. And you can start over. So basically, when you're dealing with the API, you always want to make sure in your settings for either new projects or existing projects that you have the right Python interpreter. So in my particular instance, I'm using this ArcGIS API for Python clone, Python 3 clone. So I want to make sure I have the right interpreter. So every other libraries that I load are going to be in that environment. So you can load this in this type of environment as well. So now let's turn it over to my colleague John so he can discuss the other workflows of the Python API. Ready?
Okay, thanks, Dave. All right, so Dave just showed you in a Jupyter Notebook how you can create users and groups and content. So I am just gonna run 3 quick scripts here in an IDE that are gonna populate this empty portal with users, groups, and some content. Then I'm gonna walk through a little bit more detail of how we're publishing the content. But first, I'm gonna run them because they need a couple minutes to run. And then I'm just gonna go through a little bit of a grab bag potpourri style thing of things you can do with the Python API. This, after all, is an introduction to the Python API. I'm just gonna introduce you to a couple different things that you can do, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I created groups. I just ran this script to create users, and then I'm going to run this script to create features. And then we're gonna come back and visit that. Well, no, first let me walk through how we publish data. So for those of you who are gonna need to create your own data, what I did was go and just set a variable to a directory on my system. And in this particular case, I'm searching through zip files. So I just grab a couple zip files that I know are in that directory, and then I'm going to add these zip files, the content of them, up into my portal, and then publish them. And the way I do that, and then I'm going to share those with a specific group. So it's a fairly straightforward. There is a content manager in the Python API, and there is an add method in there where you just give it the properties that are necessary to add an item to the portal. And in this case, you have to be careful and make sure that you're giving it the right type when you are adding an item. And then after you add an item, you make a call to publish. And then you'll have content in your portal. And after we publish it, what I did with this particular script is these data sets were, one was of the entire United States, all the wind farm locations, and one was all the city boundaries in Southern California. So I extracted out just the desert region and the wind turbines in Riverside County. And that's what this script is doing. And I'll go show you the results of that in a couple minutes. So what I really wanted to demonstrate, which Dave had done a little bit too, was that you can script with this API the same way you can script with ArcPy or any other Python libraries. You aren't tied to the Jupyter Notebook environment. That is a visualization environment that's a pretty good instructional tool that I'm going to show you some different things that you can do right now. So I've changed into a specific directory on my system, and I have an active Conda environment that has the ArcGIS Python API and Jupyter in it. And so I'm going to type this command Jupyter Notebook that's going to start a local web server in the directory that I tell it to. And then what I can do is open my browser, or it opens my browser into that particular folder, and this is the content I have in that folder. So first thing that I'm going to take a look at is, let's go into do a little bit, a real quick analysis type operation that we can do with the API. This is what we're going to do is we're going to use geocoding and we're going to use network routing to locate an incident, let's say a traffic incident locally, and then we're going to find the closest routes to the nearest hospitals. So I'm just going to run that, and this is in a Jupyter Notebook, and you can just run each cell. There's different ways you can run it. I select the cell, and I hit Control Enter, that runs it. I'm instantiating the closest facility layer. And then I have a list of nearby hospitals that I create here. That's a Python list with the addresses of hospitals. And then what I'm going to do is geocode those hospitals and append each of those geocoded results into another list. And I'm just calling these, I'm importing the ArcGIS geocoding module. I imported that earlier and using the geocode function to then create a feature set object from that list of hospitals. And then now what I'm going to do is log into my portal. I'm violating my typing rule. Okay, so I've logged in, I'm logging into that portal, and I've set up a map here in Palm Springs. I'm going to change the zoom level, and then I'm going to draw that feature set that I created above with all the hospital locations. I draw it on that map, and then I'm going to create an incident report. I'm just geocoding one simple point, and I'm going to create a feature set object from that, and I'm going to draw that point on the same map. So there I've got that point, and then I'm going to create routes from each of these hospitals to that incident. So I run that using the network, this portal has been configured for network analysis, and I'm using the closest facility task. I've entered in my parameters there, and then I'm going to go look at what results I have. The results are returned as a dictionary with different keys, and then there's a routes key in there that also has a dictionary returned, and we're going to go and look at the specific attributes and geometry from each returned result. And then we're going to create a line feature from each of those network results. We're going to store that in a list, and then we're going to draw those results. And we're going to scroll back up to that map and see that the routes have been appended into the map. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is take a look at what my results look like. I should have cleared this before I ran it, but anyway, so I'm running these routes and I see these are the results of my network analysis, and then I'm going to create a data frame and sort that out by travel time to each hospital. So that's an illustration of geocoding and routing using the API for Python. Let's go now. Let me run let's take a further look at some geocoding. Okay, so I'm going to log in to, this time I'm using ArcGIS Online. Boy, oh boy. Okay, that time I got it. All right, so I'm setting a variable to a CSV file on my system, and we're gonna go take a look at, I've got a bunch of addresses of coffee shops in San Francisco. So I've got a bunch of addresses, and I'm gonna look at, I'm just getting some data about that. I've got 102 rows with 9 columns, and I'm going to add this into my portal. No, okay, that item has already been added. Sorry about that. This will probably fail too. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'm going to search this portal for that layer. So this is illustrating just searching for an item type of feature layer that should be in this. So there that is. So that returned me that item. I'm going to get the layer. I'm going to add that layer to the map. So that is adding a layer into that map. Then I'm going to go into this notebook and do some more geocoding. So I run this cell to import the libraries. Enter into my ArcGIS Online org. I'm going to look at the help function. That's how I batch geocode. And then I'm going to again, set some variables to an input file and an output file. And I'm going to set a specific piece of information that the geocoding function needs. And then I'm going to read that CSV file that, again, has information about coffee shops in this area. I know this data set has some missing information, so I build that in with a pandas data frame function. I'm looking at, again, here that's a full data set. I'm verifying that I set the variable that the geocode function needs. And then I'm going to take the addresses from that table I looked at and formatting them correctly for the geocode function. And so now I've got a list of addresses that I can use the batch geocode function to create a set of results. And then what eventually I'm going to do is add the latitude and longitude values from these addresses into this file. So set up a map, zoom to a particular level, and then draw each of those results. And so that's what they look like on the map. And then I'm going to extract the latitude and longitude values from those geocoded results and add them to a table. So now those have been appended into the table. And then I'm going to write that out to a CSV file. So that's geocoding and then getting latitude and longitude values from geocoded results into a file. Okay, one other thing I want to show. I'm going to change directions a little bit. We're going to show taking a look at a web map and reordering some of the information in the pop-up in that web map. So I'm going to log into my organization, and this is what I should have done on those other notebooks. There's a functionality in the Python API that you can create a login and you can set up what's called a profile that then it will store your credentials in whatever machines you're on, credential manager, encrypt your password, so then you can just log in with this name of this profile instead of having to try and type a password in public, right? So if you were smart and on the ball, that is what you would do. So, all right, I'm logged into my organization, and I'm gonna go get a specific web map. So I've got one here. This is a web map that's in that organization. And I'm going to take a look at the JSON definition of that web map. And I'm particularly interested in the pop-up here. So I see the pop-up key here, and I'm taking a look at, these are the fields that are visible, that are in my pop-up and the order that they're listed in. And I see that the address field is further down below the latitude and longitude coordinates. And I want to change that. So first I'm going to take a look at the web map and just add it to using the widget. I'm adding that web map and just taking a look at one of the pop-ups. See, this is the name of the haunted house, and there's the latitude and longitude values. I'd rather see the address value before the latitude and longitude. So I'm just going to rifle through the dictionary of that web map definition and show me, okay, what fields are visible in my pop-up, and I've created and I enumerated those fields, so that's the order those fields are in my pop-up. And then what I'm gonna do is just rearrange it. I'm gonna move that address field up right below the name of the haunted house, and then I'm going to update the properties of this web map. Magic. All right, so now my address field is right below the haunted house where I want it. I'm going to verify that in my web map definition. There indeed is my haunted house field, and there's my address field. And then we're going to update that web map, and then I'm going to prove to you that this worked. Oh yeah. Address is now right below the name of the haunted house. So, I still get jazzed when any script I write works. So, there you have it, right? That's some manipulation stuff you can do with web maps and structures of web map, of items that are in your portal. So, let's now go take a look at my script to create features and data. And okay, so it looks like my print messages came out. So let's just take a look at the data that I automated the creation for. So right here on this page, I didn't have any content. I used that script to create a folder, and I published a couple zip files from shapefiles. They were zipped up shapefiles. I published them, and then I extracted information from them to make a web map. All with that script. And I'm just gonna show you that I could create this web map without having to go in and do it in the GUI. And there I have this map of all the districts in the Coachella Valley here, and all the windmills that, I don't know if you've ever driven out on the 10 driving into Palm Springs. It's pretty cool. There's a whole field of wind farm, or there's a whole wind farm out there. So that was just a little bit of like I said, what we tried to do is give you an intro, a grab bag of functions, of capabilities that are available in the Python API. You can script things and schedule them. You can use Jupyter Notebooks and visualize things in a map the way that we've shown. And that is what we've got. So we're done. And you've got a couple minutes for questions.
So yeah, so helpful resources. So the website's developers.arcgis.com/Python, right? We have a GitHub repo, which we post all our talks for the Python API. We have these notebooks.esri.com in case you want to try it live, the Python API. Of course, we can't get anywhere without the community because we obviously don't know the answers to all the questions. So GeoNet's the place. And then we will be posting our samples shown today on our GitHub repo. I just got to get the ones from John, so if you go there, it's my repo, but we'll post them in the next couple days. And then with that, make sure you guys take the survey, give us some good grades, because we got to get some new shoes. So give us some good scores. What we like to do now is open it up to some questions. And if you've used the API already, hopefully you learned something new. But we got a couple minutes. If you guys have questions, we could take those, and thanks for coming out. Yes?
Let's say that you want to sort of automate some of the stuff that you were doing outside of the user interface. So let's say you install ArcGIS Enterprise on a Linux box, a headless Linux box, that has Python library and API on it. And let's say, just for simplify the example, you have a CSV file that has all the addresses that you want to populate out now. Is it possible to run the Python script on a server system to build the map and the features from the CSV file to the layer, package it up, and upload it to ArcGIS without having to render anything?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to visualize anything.
Right, so pretty much everything you were doing there is kind of like what I needed to do. I just put these in all functionality questions.
Yeah, that first script I ran didn't make any use of map widgets or anything. It created groups users and took CSV files or took shape files that had been zipped up and published them to the server and interacted with them by creating other layers from them, and created a web map from them in the portal, all with no visualization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you put the resources slide back up?
Sure.
Yep.
And there's a booth in the showcase, right? So if you come by the Python API island, I'll be glad to find somebody to help you out. Or maybe I will. Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry, he had his hand up back there first. PKI stuff, you are able, well, you're asking, are you able to log in with PKI? Yes, you are able to log in with PKI. If you go to the developer site, developers.arcgis.com/Python, there's a documentation on working with different authentication schemes, and the step-by-step instructions that you should need are out there, right? I'm not an expert in PKI. That's the one with cert file, PEM, and those files, right? Yeah, do you have ways to enter those in?
Here it is right here. Yeah. Come by the
island and we can talk about that if there's a way to automate that part of the process.
Yeah, ask for Andrew. Andrew's there. He wrote this, so he can give you some ideas.
Yeah, the developers of the API are there at the island this week, so they'll be able to help with that. The question is, does the Jupyter Notebook only work with Portal? No, you can log into ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. Like with the Python API the Jupyter Notebook is just one tool, one way to use the Python API. And Jupyter Notebook can do all kinds of stuff that have nothing to do with ArcGIS or the Python API. The Anaconda software, that is a Python package management software that when you install Anaconda, it lays down Python and hundreds of libraries along with it. And there are ways you can tweak what gets installed, but it is a Python package management system that creates the capability for you to isolate sets of Python modules from each other by creating what are called environments. And then you can install whatever packages you want in those environments and activate them and only use those packages. And your vendors don't have internet access, okay. You can set this up in a disconnected environment,
yeah.
Yes. You have to get the files onto some drive and get it into that environment.
This enterprise function is everything, and then users don't have to go online.
Yes, like if you configure it properly, you don't have to access the internet, but you have to set things up in your disconnected environment to install everything. And there are ways to do that, and it's documented. All right. Yeah.
So I noticed you were using a clone earlier. So that's a content, right? Clone function.
Yeah.
The equivalent of like.
Well, yeah, you can I have mine. It's just the name of. I called it clone. I call whatever I want.
But so when you create it, does that bring over all the API and all that, right? Because like if you do a virtual environment,
Yeah.
bring over ArcGIS.
Yeah, no,
Right.
If you use Anaconda, and there's a clone capability when you're
Right.
creating an environment where you can clone one environment into another, and it brings all the packages that are in one environment into the new environment that you create. It's just a flag with Conda create.
Yeah. You could do it in Pro too, but I find it a little more easier to just do it in the command line.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Yeah.
I've used virtual environments.
Okay.
Work around and get all the GIS, arcpy.
Yeah, Anaconda seems to make the environment process a little easier than virtual environment. I couldn't follow that one.
Yeah, it's good when you have multiple clones environments, like you have different APIs and you're doing regression testing and other stuff. So yeah.